Going.
Recording started.
Good evening from Chicago, Illinois. I'm Lucy Gray, one of the co-chairs of the Global Education Conference, and I'm delighted to present Jennifer D. Klein, one of our keynotes this year that I think you're going to really enjoy hearing from. Every year she has presented at least 5 sessions in Spanish and in English since the inception of our conference, and I thought it was about time that we gave her her own keynote. She's one of the most talented global educators I know, and incredibly adept with creating curriculum and all sorts of new things, and I think you're going to really enjoy getting to know her. Before I get to her formal bio, I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, in particular IEARN USA and the Global Campaign for Education United States chapter, which have been so supportive of our efforts in making this conference happen. So without further ado, I'm going to take you to the map here. And while you are putting your location on the map using the tools to the left of the map, I'm going to read to you a little bit about Jennifer. Jennifer D. Klein holds a BA from Bard College and an MA from the University of Colorado at Boulder, both in literature and creative writing. A product of experiential, project-based education herself, she taught college and high school English for 19 years, including 5 years in Central America and 11 years in all-girls education. She holds a principal's license and has a broad background in global program planning and evaluation, student-driven curricular strategies, single-sex education, student service travel, and experiential inquiry-driven learning. In 2010, Jennifer left teaching to begin Principled Learning Strategies, a consulting business dedicated to enriching global educational practices in schools through curriculum development, professional development, and the use of e-technologies. Jennifer is a professional development director for World Leadership School, coaching teachers in global integration, supporting the development of collaborative online curriculum, and facilitating projects between American classrooms and schools outside the U.S. She is also the professional development and outreach coordinator for Taking It Global, an international online community for educators and students interested in global issues, where she designs and delivers accredited online e-courses for teachers across the world. Further, Jennifer is the Director of Educational Development for the Research Journalism Initiative, an educational nonprofit that facilitates creative expression among Palestinian young people and the use of their media projects in American classrooms. Finally, Jennifer is a national faculty member for the Buck Institute for Education, giving workshops on project-based learning and global PBL. For more information, please visit her website, principledlearning.org. So it looks like we've got a small but mighty audience tonight, chiming in from the East Coast of the United States mostly, and looks like a few people in Asia and Australia are here with us. You might want to tell us in the chat where you're from if you haven't already and what time it is. I'm in Chicago, Illinois, where it's cold and it's about 8 o'clock at night. And I think somebody's off the map there, I see. Great. Jennifer, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to you. And I know that you're going to share a lot of great things with us, and I think people would rather hear from you than me. So good luck, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lucy. I appreciate the introduction. As you can imagine from that bio, I wear a lot of hats, and at the moment I'm actually connecting from Bismarck, North Dakota, where I've been for a couple of days. I think I don't know whether Lucy wins for cold or I do, but it is super cold here. I've been working with teachers, and I'll be here all week doing coaching for the Buck Institute. As Lucy mentioned, I've been part of this conference for a long time, and I really value what it's brought to me as a professional. Yeah, nice comment, Lucy, absolutely. I very much enjoy the conference. I think it's an incredible opportunity, especially because it's so open source and available to anybody who has internet. I think this given the topic that I'm going to explore this evening, actually, I think I would describe this conference as being surprisingly equitable in what it allows people to access, and that's fairly rare among conferences. So thank you to Lucy and Steve for creating this amazing opportunity. Before I get going, I did want to clarify, I am going to share a link at the very end of the presentation where you'll be able to download all of the slides as PDFs. I mentioned this at the beginning because there are links on the slides throughout the presentation, and I don't want anybody to feel like you have to try to capture all of those links during the presentation itself. You definitely don't have to. All of the different resources that I'm talking about, websites, people, organizations, they will all be linked at the end, they'll all be linked on the PDFs, and there'll be clickable links that will take you to those sites. So the only thing that you have to write down this whole evening is the link that I provide at the end so that you can go grab the slides from and download them from a file share account. And that way, hopefully, you can just be completely present. I'm a really big believer in this being the approach that I want, participants to feel like they can be completely here, just be part of a conversation. Don't worry so much about, taking notes and keeping track, and just enjoy the conversation. And the question was asked a little while ago, too, if I'm comfortable with the side chatter and the dialogue and the interaction on the chat board, and yes, absolutely, I love that. There's nothing weirder than talking to my computer in an empty hotel room in Bismarck, so I definitely would love to have your participation, and I'm always curious about who's in the room and what your ideas are. So our goal tonight is to explore a variety. I'm kind of approaching this from the negative because I think it's really worth taking some of those negative paradigms that we so often set up when it comes to global learning and global partnerships and trying to shift them. So throughout this presentation, I'm looking at a variety of pitfalls, but I'm also trying to provide questions which I hope will allow educators to start reframing their thinking. And that's part of why I'm sharing the slides with everyone and making them available to you, because I really hope that these slides can help to provoke some dialogue within your own educational communities. So I'm going to start by introducing myself a little bit more. This is an image that my mom brought to me a few years ago when I left the classroom and started doing global educational work. As Lucy mentioned, I was a classroom teacher for 19 years. In this photograph, I'm in first grade. So I would have been 6 years old, 6 or 7, and it was picture day. And what's remarkable about this picture, other than the fact that my mom managed to convince me to put on a pink dress, which I think might be a once in my entire life experience, is the button that I'm wearing in the photograph. And the reason I share this is because this is my mother's earliest memory of me acting, being an activist in a good way, and feeling the need to manifest my opinions in a really strong and direct way. Interestingly enough, on picture day, she still remembers my choosing the button after she chose the dress, and saying I was going to wear it in all of the pictures. Now, this was around 1974, I believe. We used to do, multiple pictures around the tree, and this was not the only picture that was taken of me. It's the only one, though, that has the button in it. And of course, I should be clear that this moment was not necessarily an easy one at school. There were a few people who had issues with it. Sorry, for clarity's sake, the button says "Free the Soviet Jews." And so it's a political protest button that I had picked up someplace, I don't know where, and I was insisting on wearing it at picture day. And the photographers argued with me, and my teachers argued with me a little bit, but fortunately I was raised in really student-centered schools, and so ultimately, as you can see by the grin on my face, I won that argument, and you can tell that there were no tears involved in getting to win that argument. And this is, in a lot of ways, I think this is an early image of how I saw the world, that when something felt really wrong, that one had to stand up and do something about it. And that was a theme that certainly ran throughout my life. I know there are several people in this session right now who work with me and who know that I can be very direct about the things that I believe. And, I think in a lot of ways this is a sign of my earliest connections with the world and my deep, deep desire to make sure that the world was an equitable place. And so I just wanted to share that as kind of an opening story about me. I did have some global experiences in my teens that were difficult, and I'm not going to go into all of those stories because I've presented on some of them in the past. But I think in a lot of ways, my urge to do global education and to work with communities around the world and educators around the world came very much from the early heartbreak in my teens, particularly of seeing a great deal of human conflict, of difficulty, of poverty, of strife around the world, and really just that little girl in me that you see in that photograph grinning away was just heartbroken by the state of the world. A friend of mine in Palestine said he believes that I really am a broken-hearted optimist, which was a really nice way of framing the way that I see the world, that I have an optimistic view about what's possible, but I'm rather broken-hearted often by what I see. So this presentation comes very much from the heart of that part of who I am, and without further ado, I will try to share a few of my insights. And actually, before I get to the insights, sorry, I forgot I had the slide in here. The other part of the story is I mentioned that I had some heartbreak in my teens, lived in Israel, Palestine for quite a while, actually for about 6 months of the senior year of high school. Came home rather crushed by my global experiences, and it was the classroom that reopened those avenues for me. So I share this quotation because my turning point as an educator came very much when I was teaching in Costa Rica, my very first year of teaching high school, and on the discovery that I had the son of Oscar Arias, the Nobel Prize winner, in my classroom in Costa Rica. And that sudden realization brought with it this knowledge that I had an opportunity through the classroom to shape young leaders, to not brainwash them into thinking just like I did, but to encourage them to explore in meaningful ways, to value and honor the needs and perspectives of others. And that was really the turning point where I re-engaged with the world and stopped feeling quite so heartbroken and started to feel like the activist in me had an avenue. So, all right. So I'm going to walk through these one by one in the upcoming slides, but this is just an overview of the 6 primary pitfalls that I'd like to look at with you this evening. And as I said, each of the slides that we'll go to next will offer a few reframing questions for taking that pitfall and trying to refocus the way we're thinking about our global learning experiences and global partnerships with other communities in the world. So they include the goals of exoticism, conflicting priorities between the 2 schools involved or more than 2 schools involved in a given project or partnership, issues of equipment and access parity, often too much focus on helping rather than learning together, misperceptions, as I would see it, of what the capacities are on the variety of sides of a given partnership or relationship, and then seeing our role as solving other people's problems rather than learning together or solving together. So I'll walk through these one at a time and take a deeper look. The first one is what I would describe as goals of exoticism, and I see this taking the shape of teachers who are fascinated. She missed the story, but my mother has joined this session, so she'll have to watch the recording to see that I honored that story from my childhood. Love it. So goals of exoticism, the observational mindset. I remember noticing this for the first time when I was I was part of a field trip in an elementary school I taught in briefly in Costa Rica, and I remember going to see the orphanage and my students who were privileged kids looking through the gates at the front gates of the orphanage at the children and playing in the playground or in a courtyard inside, and suddenly having this terrible feeling that what we were doing was observing other children like zoo animals. And so I think that's a big part of it, is moving away from those observational mindsets. I've also noticed a lot of tendency toward short-term projects in global education, not digging deep into relationships in a meaningful way. And then also what I would describe as partner hopping, teachers who will come to me, for example, and say, okay, so last year we did this country, next year I want to do this one, and then the year after that I want to make a partnership with this one. And I think that I understand where it comes from. We want it to be exciting and new and fresh and different, but I do think that there's something really valuable about trying to immerse ourselves more deeply with other cultures and to really try not to think of ourselves as observers or short-term kind of partners, but to really see ourselves as having the capacity to connect on deep levels and build deep relationships. So some of the reframing questions: how might we ensure that we learn with our partners more than about them, so that it's not as much the observation, but we're in exploration together? What are the advantages of long-term partnerships over country hopping? And I think there are a lot of folks in the room who know just how incredibly powerful it is to make those relationships much more about depth and over time and really developing a connection. And then also, how do we ensure that we don't exoticize our partners and can really see them for who they are, so that it's not about, oh, it's so exciting we're connecting with a country in Africa today, but, you know, who are the people we're connecting with, and what do we want to be able to learn with them, and not over exoticizing who they are, so that we really connect with who they are in a meaningful and authentic way. The second is the conflicting priorities, and I want to be clear too as I talk about all of this that I think that there are some really real reasons, authentic reasons for why this happens very often. For those in public schools particularly, you have these standards that somebody else has set up for you. You're often working from pacing guides that someone else has established for you, and it's very hard to be flexible with curriculum. That said, I don't think it makes sense either to engage with a partner to try to fulfill our own curriculum. I hope anyway that that's not what we're here to do. And I know that the kinds of people who show up for Global EdCon aren't necessarily those folks, but I really do think that it's important to recognize that we may have curricular priorities, but that what we're building is a partnership or a relationship with other communities in the world, and that our curricular focus or needs are only part of the puzzle. There's another teacher involved. You know, if you're talking about a two-person partnership, there's one other teacher. If you're talking about something bigger, perhaps, you know, multiple teachers. But every one of them has different district demands. Each one of them has a different time zone and hemisphere and school year calendar. And yes, that does make it trickier, but I don't think that we should shy away from the trickiness. I think that it's essential that we find ways to connect in the middle and really and find that middle ground together. So the reframing questions: where do we notice that our individual priorities intersect? I always insist that schools, or that teachers, pardon me, have their first Skype call without too many ideas already in place. Walk into the conversation with ideas, certainly, but with what I described in a blog at one point last year as an empty plate, meaning a willingness to fill that plate with whatever comes up, with whatever is possible, so that we start the conversation with, well, okay, so let me hear what your priorities are, and let me share mine, and let's see where we might intersect. How can we build a project around the priorities then that we have in common, that we recognize we both have? And how might a project meet our needs, the needs that exist on both sides of the world, or both sides of the connection, to make sure that it's valuable for both and that one side isn't exploiting, if you will, even unintentionally, the others for what they can offer. I think the way I put it in one of my articles was, I don't think we should be, you know, connecting with the world just to fulfill in 45 minutes our own curricular strategies. I think it needs to go deeper than that. The next piece is equipment and access parity. And, you know, I think the issue of parity or equality is a really tricky one when it comes to equipment and access. I realize that we do have some very important things that can happen technologically when both sides have access to the same level of technology. But I'm also increasingly convinced that we're doing the world a disservice if what we try to do is to make sure that every classroom has the same equipment we do in order to make sure that we're able to connect. I'm not sure that that's actually a reasonable thing to expect. I'm not convinced. I mean, obviously, if the community comes forward and says, look, we really want to do more global education, but we want to start by coming up with the computers, we need your help with that, that's one thing. But to assume that we can make every classroom in the world look like our own is, I think, a bit egotistical, unfortunately. Again, and I do want to keep clarifying, I'm talking about generally unintentional blunders, but ones that I think are really moments where I really think there's an opportunity to reframe and rethink. So if equipment and access parity can include things like the internet access or internet speed, audio and video devices and what people have access to, computers, and even other project materials. I've worked on quite a few projects where one school has the means to create something quite beautiful and the other side doesn't necessarily have those same means. So a few of the reframing questions that we might ask ourselves as educators to try to move beyond those issues would include things like, can we build a project around simple technologies or even none at all? When I used to teach the e-courses in global citizenship for taking it global, one of the things I used to say to participants was, remember there's this thing called the mail, and we can still put materials into boxes and project items into boxes and send them to each other. We don't have to use the internet. Yes, it's made things better, but the assumption that that's what we always need to do isn't necessarily accurate. I think there are other ways to build a partnership still. How can we ensure that all the partners are able to create and share high quality work? And I think that's a really important piece. I mean, if we've got students exchanging materials or exchanging works that they've done, we want it to feel equally good on both sides, that both sides are really able to offer something of high quality, that students on both sides or all sides feel that they have something of beauty and value to share with each other. And a good example would be, one school has the materials and means to create packets with, nice bindings and pretty pictures and multicolors and the printouts, and the other side is still handwriting their packets. How can we find a way to create an opportunity where the kids who are handwriting won't necessarily feel that they don't have as much to offer or can't create something as pretty? And then the last one is, how can we make it safe to interact regardless of existing inequalities of technological infrastructure or of other means? And I think that's a lot of that relies on the two teachers really connecting with each other, the kids connecting with each other, and creating a culture between the 2 or 3 classrooms involved that makes it feel safe for all involved to be able to share what they're doing and feel comfortable doing so, and that what they bring to the table is valuable regardless of the means that they might have. And I don't want to seem like I'm racing, but I do want to make sure that I have some time toward the end too to have some continued dialogue. I'm keeping an eye here on some of the chat, which is great to see. Yes, and Ross, we do have exactly that challenge with many of the communities that World Leadership works with overseas. I'll talk a little bit about that organization a little later in this presentation. And it's interesting, I saw the commentary on the keynote this morning, and yes, I do think that food, fun, and festivals are okay, but I would always describe those as a starting place because I do think that they're observational mindsets ultimately. All right, so moving forward. So this next slide has to do with too much focus on helping. Now, I think the urge to help others in the world comes from a very real and authentic place. So again, I'm not trying to suggest that we never help. But if the mindset, if the goal, if the focus and tone is all about one side having the means to somehow save the other, I think we can run into some real problems. When we're talking about service travel, we're talking about what's often referred to as voluntourism, where kids go out in the world and slap a coat of paint onto a wall of a school building and feel very, very proud of themselves for having changed the world. I'm not suggesting that putting the paint on the side of the building doesn't matter. It definitely does, and I'm involved in organizations that do service travel with students. But how do we de-emphasize service and emphasize learning and partnership in a way that takes it deeper than that? Philanthropic overload is another thing. I taught for a very long time in independent schools, and I found that almost any time that a global conversation started, the next question was, how much should we donate and to whom? And I'm not saying that money isn't often of real value to the communities that we might connect with, but I do think that if we go in with that mindset of we're going to help this other school, that we can lead to an overload for kids where they start to feel that when there's a problem in the world, they should do what so many adults do, which is reach for their checkbook and feel better about themselves. I think there's something more powerful that can happen when we move beyond just that and just the fundraising. And then the last one is related attitudes of superiority. I wasn't quite sure how to put this on the slide, but what I mean by that is I think when we approach things that way, we're not seeing ourselves as walking with others on a path that we're on together. And I think we tend to end up feeling very much that we are somehow lifting others up. And I think that can create a really unequal place from which to build a relationship and a partnership between classrooms. And again, I never want students to walk away with that feeling that the moral of the story is anytime you see a problem in the world, throw money at it. So how can we de-emphasize service and emphasize learning and partnership? How can we build a project which focuses on actions other than or in addition to fundraising so that we can have something deeper occur? Sorry, I am in a hotel. I hope that we don't have too many internet blips, but I just noticed that happened. So I'll kind of keep an eye. If I suddenly disappear, it's the hotel connection, and I'll make sure that I reconnect as fast as possible. And then also, what can we do to ensure that our students see themselves as true partners in collaborative change rather than seeing themselves as the answer? You know, I was a big fan of the Gandhi quotation, be the change you wish to see in the world. I remain a fan of it, but I fear often that students in the more developed parts of the world often misinterpret that statement as, I am the change I want to see, as opposed to we can create the change that we want to see. And that shift from I to we is an absolutely huge shift that's of real value, I think, for our students to see and to be part of. And I really think that it can make a difference in terms of how we frame and think about our relationships globally. The next one is misperceptions of academic capacity. And I've encountered this a few times, particularly with college prep high schools, where there's an urge for a level of academic rigor, and that concern about rigor influences the kinds of partnership choices that they make, and even makes a good teacher with a good intention turn away from an opportunity to partner with a classroom simply because they are not studying the same things, or they're not at the same academic level. And it's hard because, again, I understand where the teachers are coming from, but anytime a teacher says, well, I really need to make sure that they are studying this exact same, you know, science concept, whatever it is, that's really tricky to do. And again, it's kind of that teacher is dominating the conversation by suggesting my own needs for academic parity matter more than the needs of the other teacher or the other students involved. So the kinds of misperceptions I'm talking about include things like issues of age and grade level parity and equality, assumptions about low academic rigor in parts of the world that are less developed, and even the cultural deficit sort of a model in thinking about what your partner brings to the table. So yes, maybe there are times when academic parity does matter, but I would encourage that if one matters, then maybe we can be flexible about the other. If academic parity matters, can we be flexible about age parity? Is it okay if the students are a very different age, if there are differences in the educational systems for the sake of those similarities in academic focus? If age parity matters, if we want kids to be connecting with kids who are right about the same age, can we be flexible about academic parity? Can we be comfortable with the fact that, and find ways to be increasingly comfortable with the fact that schools around the world have a variety of different age groups or academic levels that they're reaching for, and they're doing what they can, and they're doing their best? And finally, what might we gain by approaching our partners consistently with an asset mindset rather than a deficit mindset, and to come into it with curiosity about what they offer the conversation and what they bring to the table of value, rather than starting from an assumption that we may have to somehow bring them along to our level, which I think is, again, a very dangerous place to focus. And yes, I agree, Lucy. I think that the U.S. education in general has a deficit mindset, particularly when it comes to students of differing backgrounds and to the rest of the world and the education that they are providing their kids. And then the last pitfall that I want to mention is this tendency to solve for others more than work with them to solve. And I'm going to share a few project examples in a moment that are projects that I believe have effectively avoided some of these pitfalls. And you'll notice that in most of them, the teachers and students are working together on common problems, or working together to really shift a mindset and to work together on something. So the solving for and not with, that can include underestimating other people's capacity to solve their own problems. In fact, even misestimating their capacity to solve our own problems. I think the most powerful partnerships are when a teacher notices, or a classroom gets a chance to learn about what another classroom can teach them, rather than going in thinking, oh, we're here to teach the others. I mean, really, I guess I'm not quite making as much sense as I want to, but my point being that I think we all bring something to the table, and to see others as incapable of solving their problems, and to assume that a student from a more developed country might have the capacity to solve a problem for another community better than they could solve it for themselves, is, again, a very dangerous mindset. I think this can lead to really over-empowering students and leaving them feeling like small acts are saving others. I don't know if any of you have heard this new term, slacktivism. And I've noticed a lot of teenagers having this challenge, where they really do tend to approach being active and being involved in global change as simple as hitting like on Facebook. It's called slacktivism, to slack off. In other words, slacktivism. Yes, thank you, Diana. You hit it. And she spelled it perfectly there, slacktivism. So now I feel really good about myself because I clicked like on something that was meaningful on Facebook, and I can feel like I did something about it when I didn't really do much of anything other than click like from my sofa. It's a great word. Not a good thing, but a fascinating word. So a few reframing questions. What can we learn from our partners about how they see change in their own community? And I was realizing after I uploaded the slides tonight that I missed an opportunity here too to say, what could we learn from this other community that our community has lost or doesn't have that we could learn from, right? How could we improve our own societies by looking at other societies in the world, rather than assuming that our role is to help make their societies look more like ours? How can we help our students to become truly collaborative change makers? And then so that they see themselves as part of the solution, but not the whole solution by themselves. And most importantly, how might we create a project which solves a problem common to both communities? And I wanted to share a quick example, though I don't have a slide for it, of what I'm talking about. Global Partners Junior, which is a middle school program, a global ed program, which is hosted by taking it global, but I believe it began in New York, in the Bronx, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. This project has brought together over 50 communities, schools, in different parts of the world. And what they do is they pose projects that can be done by students anywhere. And one of the ones that I remember reading about a couple years ago that I really liked was challenging students to identify an unused piece of land in their community and repurpose it. That's a problem that any community has. Whether you're in an urban or a rural environment, there are plenty of spaces that are underutilized when it comes to what a community might need. And so the whole point and the frame of that project is, well, all over the world we have unused land that has the potential for something more. Why not have our students all over the world trying to solve their own problems, but doing it in partnership with each other? And these are great dialogue on the side here. This is great. If I have some time toward the end, I'll skim through and engage in some of these comments, but I've been kind of keeping an eye as we go, and I'm glad to hear that this is rousing some big ideas and new thinking and some insights. I know that, as I said at the beginning, I like to push a few boundaries in a safe and meaningful way, and really encourage everyone here to think about the choices that you're making and ways to ensure that those choices are equitable as much as possible. So we share a couple of project examples, and these are just a few schools that I've worked with. There are many more examples like this, but these are a few of the schools that I've worked the most closely with over the last few years since I left the classroom myself. So Town School for Boys is a small K-8 boys school in San Francisco, California, and an independent school. And one of the projects that I have found very powerful is a word problem project, and you can see in the bottom right of the slide there one of the images. This is a picture taken by one of the students in this classroom, and then the question that student is asking other students in the world to solve. And what this teacher is doing is basically having her students, her name is Kristen Goggin, and she's having her students take photographs of local landmarks and write word problems about them. But then she's also gathering exactly the same thing from other schools in the world. So when I was in Sierra Leone in March, I collected questions there. She's gathered questions from Shanghai. I think there are 2 Canadian schools involved at this point. And remember what I said at the beginning, of course, folks, all of these links will be clickable in the PDF, so all you need to do is download the PDFs and you'll have access. And she would love to have any and all of you involved. That's part of why I'm sharing the project, is so that hopefully she'll get some more partners. There are some from South Africa there, and so it's a growing collection of images and then related word problems from kids all over the world who are learning to do math word problems. Great way to share about who they are and where they're from, and also embed the academic content, or that significant content, of mathematics. Another example that came from Town School comes from a teacher who's unfortunately no longer in the classroom this year, but she created a kindergarten classroom on children's rights. And her project, her driving question for that project was, how can we, as kids in San Francisco, support the rights of children everywhere? And her students they connected with Sierra Leone, with the community that I have worked closely with for about 4 or 5 years now. And her kindergartners looked at photographs and got an opportunity to ask also, to look at photographs and ask questions and pose wonderings, and then by fortuitous chance, really, I went to Sierra Leone within that same year of their kindergarten year, and I took all of their extra questions, and it was a really powerful experience. One of my most meaningful memories in connection to this project was a moment in Ashley's classroom, in the kindergarten classroom in San Francisco, about 2 months before I left on my trip. And I asked the boys what they were interested in learning more about, what were their wonderings. And one of the little boys asked, and this is a great story too for showing that you don't have to, there's no such thing as a child too young to start to understand some of these things. One of the little boys raised his hand and said, I wonder if they're poor. And a bunch of the other boys actually got very upset with him and said, you're not allowed to ask that. That's a terribly rude question. And the teacher did a really skillful job of saying, okay, well, let's unpack that for a minute. Why does it feel rude? And they talked a little bit about that. What is it that we really want to know? Let's see if we can reframe the question to get at what we really want to know. And one little boy, and I almost started to cry in the classroom, honestly. It was so moving. One little boy, these are 5-year-olds, raises his hand and says, I guess I wonder if they have what they need. And then another little boy raised his hand and said, and if they don't, I wonder what they need. And what I found really striking about that was that kids as young as 5 or 6 were capable of reframing a question that felt uncomfortable, and to really trying to understand people in a deeper way, in a more meaningful way. So these are great projects, and even though the second one, Ashley, is no longer in the classroom, she's left the website up, and all of her resources, including all of the photographs that I brought back from Sierra Leone and so forth, are available there. The next 2 come from Brookwood School, and if I'm not mistaken, I actually do have someone from, I think, yes, Rich is here, I believe, in the room, from Brookwood School. This is in Massachusetts. Rich, if you have your mic set up, I know I didn't actually prepare you for this, but if you have your mic set up and are connected right now, you are welcome to come in and just say a couple things about this project. If you'd like to, I'll give him a second and see if he's able to connect. Okay, so I have a basic description. I'll give you a little detail. And Susie Boss, one of my colleagues at the Buck Institute, wrote an excellent article which includes a really good video as well of this project. But the main driving, or one of the several driving questions for this project was, how can we use collaborative STEM projects to raise awareness of global problems and connect students around the world to each other? And what I found particularly striking about this project was the fact that students in a variety of places were all trying to build their own most efficient cook stove. So rather than trying to solve each other's problems, they were working with inexpensive materials from their own communities and were finding ways to develop a cook stove that was efficient and clean and low cost, so that they were able to cook more effectively. And nobody really suggested that any one group had the best answer necessarily to how to do that. Their partner schools included a girls' school, FAWE Girls' School in Kigali, Rwanda, the Kasisi Project in Uganda, and Colegio Bandeirantes in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I think part of what really allowed this to be such an equitable project was that the teacher, Rich there, went to the countries and was, or connected with the majority of these teachers at some point in person. I know that that's a really difficult thing to manage in a lot of cases, but I will say I think there's an incredible value in the face-to-face connections and the opportunity to really meet someone in person. And whenever possible, I think that's a worthwhile goal. It was a very big part of why I went ahead and went to Sierra Leone when I did, was because I was really concerned about making sure that that face-to-face connection happened, and that I didn't continue to work with this community without ever having been there on the ground, connecting with leaders and young people and really understanding the circumstances. So that's Rich's project. On another note, I'm working this year with a younger years. So that first one was a high school project. The second one is a third grade project. And this is, in this classroom, students are exploring the driving question, how can we learn about the world by exchanging postcards with other kids? This is a project that the teacher discovered. So the URL there, the link will take you to the project itself if you want to get your classrooms involved, and there are quite a few different classrooms in the world that are involved in this. The picture that you see on the slide is actually of their wonderings. That's their map and their board, and then all of the things that you see listed to the side are the things we might want to learn about, and they include the way kids play, landmarks, climate, transportation, money, sports, food, technology, and electricity, clothes, animals, language, culture, including traditional holidays, lifestyle or way of life, geography, and plants. Oh, that's great to hear that, Barbara, that's great that you do that one as well. I think it's a neat idea. I love that the kids receive something actual, that they can hold in their hands. That's one of the things that I miss about the virtual world, and I'm not knocking technology, because I mean, a huge portion of what I do professionally now is on technology, and I'm grateful for it. Otherwise, I would never get to be home if I didn't have technology. But I also think that we've lost the art of the actual object in our hands, and to receive an actual postcard from a kid in another part of the world, I think that sounds great. I like that a lot. The other project that I want to share is one that I'll be talking or will be exploring a little bit more about tomorrow evening as well in another presentation, and I'll share those details in a moment. Now, I don't want to seem like a hypocrite because this project does include some level of fundraising, but I also think that there's an opportunity for equal exchange, and I'm fairly sure that Hindo is not able to connect. I'm just going to skim here and see if this young leader in Sierra Leone was able to connect. It's sort of the middle of the night for him, so I think he's saving his energy for tomorrow night. This is a young man who is the grandson of a paramount chief of this entire region of Sierra Leone, of Bumpe Ngal Kingdom, or Chiefdom, pardon me. To be able to taking at global courses, he has gotten up in the middle of the night, poured fuel into a generator at a local World Vision office, often had to wake up a drunk guard to open the doors to the building, and then that's how he's able to connect on internet. So it's a very big deal anytime that he Skypes with the community or things like this. And right now, Hindo is working very, very hard to prevent Ebola from spreading in his community. They've had a few isolated cases. They've done a good job so far, and as you can see in the photograph, they're working very hard to bring the cleaning supplies, buckets, and information, education about how to keep safe to every village in the chiefdom, and there are about almost 300 villages total. This is a cause that my whole family has gotten involved in. Everyone in my family has donated money. And again, I don't want it to seem like it's about money, but one of the things, I did write a blog about this, and again, you'll have access to that link. One of the things that I'm hoping is that we can create an equitable exchange, meaning that schools get a chance to hear about the work going on the ground and the chance to Skype live with Hindo and other young leaders in this community. They're thrilled to do it. And that part of that exchange includes helping to support the grassroots work that they're doing. So I've tried to come up with a bunch of different project ideas for teachers, ways that they could embed significant content into a conversation about Sierra Leone and the Ebola virus, which is obviously, as Susie Boss put it at one point when she tweeted for me, it doesn't get more real than a real world problem like this. And it's happening right now, and so why not try to get connected? And yeah, Diana, you don't need to worry about the links on chat because my last slide will give you the link to the slides themselves, a very simple link, and then you can just grab them and all of the links will be clickable at that point. So that'll make it nice and easy. Yeah, absolutely. I want people to be able to just enjoy the conversation and not worry about that. So a few of the ideas, I mean, there are a bunch of others as well in the blog that I wrote. How can we determine which solutions to the Ebola spread are most effective? You know, how can we use math to understand the Ebola virus and its spread better? What can we learn by connecting with young people in Sierra Leone that we can't learn from watching the news? We just had a school in Sao Paulo, the graded school, connect with the community I believe it was last week, and it was really powerful for the kids. Parish Episcopal School in Dallas will be connecting with them in early January, and I'm working with a teacher at the Madeira School in Virginia who has actually planned an entire course on current world issues in science. It's a 5-week modular course in science, and it's going to focus entirely on Ebola. And they'll be working with this community and probably with others as well. So really, really nice opportunities there as well. And again, you know, I don't want it to seem hypocritical that I said it's not about raising money, but I think as long as there's a real relationship created between the schools or between the communities, then a certain degree of, yeah, we're working together in this, and our kids are going to get to learn some new things, and we're going to do what we can to support your efforts. I think that can be a really equitable paradigm and an effective one. Oh, and that's interesting, Lucy. You're saying there is a keynote presenters with an Ebola challenge. Great, that's great to hear. It's interesting too because I think part of why I feel more comfortable saying that yes, there's money involved in this case is because I've been to the community. It's not a big giant organization. It's a community of young people and elders who were decimated during the rebel war and who are now working very, very hard to try to change and to try to create a better community and to try to keep people safe, frankly. And I think that's really powerful and important. So tomorrow evening, 2 teachers from Town School and I will be online, and Hindo, we hope, will be with us as well. Fingers crossed that he's able to get up in the middle of the night and connect and that everything works for him. So we should be able to do that tomorrow evening. I'm really excited to have the opportunity for folks to hear. This is actually the same teacher who developed the math word problems, and she's put together a really thoughtful, insightful presentation about the work that they're doing with Sierra Leone, and frankly, what it means to expose kids that young. And this is a K-8. What it means to expose kids who are that young to real challenges and to real problems. And to, yes, I love the picture too. I'm glad you mentioned it, Julia, because I didn't want to forget to say they just shared this a couple of days ago because Town School made a donation for some of the work that they've been doing, and several of the teachers also have made individual donations, which is pretty lovely. And this is the message back from children in Bumpe is, thank you so much to Town School. We will name a chicken town. Bless you. And I'm sure that the teachers are sharing that. But not to gloss over the challenges, right? This is a real virus. There are people dying all over the world. So what does it mean to create a relationship with a school in another part of the world, even in the worst of times? And what does it mean to make sure that your partnership endures those hard times as well as the times when we can have later exchanges and that kind of thing with each other? And I want to end by looking at 3 organizations that I believe are doing a really good job of trying to create something that's equitable. I love everything that's been mentioned in the chat box. I think is very valid. I'm not suggesting that these 3 organizations are the only ones kind of getting it right, if you will. But these are 3 organizations that I work fairly closely with, the first 2 particularly, and that I believe are doing a lot of really, really good work when it comes to trying to create equity. As Ross, the Executive Director of World Leadership School, has mentioned already in the chat box tonight, World Leadership School has been very concerned about the issue of equity and of really developing collaborative leadership programs. So the main work of World Leadership School is leading student programs, learning programs where they go out into the students go out into the world and work collaboratively in communities, not to save or fix, but to really work alongside community members, as was said in the chat box tonight, to really try to find ways to walk in each other's shoes, if you will, and really understand each other deeply. We do a lot of professional development as well, and I do a lot of teacher coaching and helping teachers try to find that right partner and build something meaningful as a partnership with them. And we also run professional development trips to the developing world. This summer I'll be taking teachers. If anybody's interested, you're welcome to reach out to me, but I'll be taking teachers from any school that would like to join us to Belize in Guatemala for immersion in the Mayan community, work alongside of Mayan teachers, and an opportunity for a professional development experience and exchange with teachers there. And what I'm finding more and more is that as soon as the teacher's worldview shifts a little bit, the classroom automatically is transformed as well. So these are really powerful programs. But we've really made an effort at World Leadership School to make sure that the kinds of things that we're doing in these communities are the things that the communities want, and that it's not one side giving to or fixing for the other, but that we're in an exchange, and that their students are involved in the programming that we're doing on the ground as much as students from North America are. The second organization is Taking It Global. I know that many of you in the room are already friends of TIG and TIG Ed. Taking It Global is located in Toronto, but is a global platform of young people and teachers from all over the world. There are over 500,000 active members who are involved in trying to create social change. And it's a really inspiring community to be part of. I feel really fortunate to have connected with them, even though I sometimes joke that I feel like the old lady of the organization, because they are a youth organization, and I think there's really no one in the organization other than me and a couple of other teachers who are over about 31, 32, and they're doing just a great job. And yes, I hope Ross is seeing what you're saying there, Lucy, that I would love to, I think that would be great to have students from World Leadership School get involved and present next year. That would be great to do. We did that a few years ago, actually. The original connection with Sierra Leone was one that I built in reaction or in response to a request by a young sophomore, high school sophomore at the Berkeley Carroll School. And so about I think it was the first year that Global EdCon ran and that I was involved in it, we had a presentation that was run predominantly by that young person who had come up with it. So yes, Lucy, we would love to get some students involved. That's a great idea. And then the last organization is Worldviews. Julia Coburn, who's also in the room here, and Julia, please feel free to jump in with the Worldviews link. Although again, all of these, the names of the organizations that you see here in yellow will be hyperlinked on the PDFs once you grab them, so you can explore these. Worldviews has created a platform that actually erases many of the biggest challenges of global education and global partnering by allowing teachers to, by allowing classrooms in any part of the world to participate in asking questions and offering answers to questions. And it's a great way of sort of crowdsourcing ideas about global education. It takes out a lot, or about the world, I should say. It takes out a lot of the variables of not knowing whether your partner is going to communicate consistently. A lot of the things that cause global partnerships to implode, I think, are erased by the way that they've set this up. And they've really tried to design it as a tool that is intuitive and useful for teachers, so it has that capacity to track student involvement and engagement in ways that allow you to assess how students are involved in the project. But a really, really cool project, and the recording from last night's presentation is available already, so I certainly encourage you to take a look and learn more about what Julia is building and what it might offer to your students as well. So I think I managed to do that and still breathe. I don't feel like I'm faint or anything, so I think or at least maybe I slowed down at some point when I realized I was racing. I want to thank all of you for being part of this conversation, and I'm glad to stick around and answer questions if you have any. I want to make sure that everyone sees this URL right here, which I'm marking for you, which is where you'll be able to find the slides. And so if you go to that link, and I will try to hyperlink it for you to here, you'll be able to access and download all of the slides, and all of the links that I've shared will become, hyperlinks so that you'll be able to access all of them. So there you go. So I'm glad to answer questions or to respond to comments. I would love to. I've been kind of half following what's going on the side, but it was a pleasure to be part of the conversation, and thank you for being part of it. Thank you for letting me share my strong opinions, and I hope that this offers a few meaningful insights into ways that one can shift the mindset and reframe the way we think about global learning in ways that will make our experiences more equitable for students. So if people have questions, I am glad to
I see a question from Kate Wampler. Do you have any curriculum programs for global ed that you recommend?
Curricular programs. You mean in term? Are you talking in terms of sort of the hardcore, just curricular resources? Is that what you're talking about, as opposed to global partnership connections? I mean, I've been impressed by curriculum being written by a lot of different organizations. I'm increasingly impressed by the Choices program out of Brown University for high school age students. I think they're incredibly fast to respond to current events. I'm sorry, did you want to jump in and clarify the question?
Doesn't the Brown program have a series of iBooks, by the way? I think I ran across them.
I believe that they do, yes.
Yeah. I would also add the Global Oneness Project. You might find some stuff there too.
Yes, I've been really encouraging a lot of teachers to make use of the Global Oneness Project films. I think those films, they're incredibly resonant films and that have been produced all over the world. They're just starting to get some attention nationally. I discovered them about 8 years ago before anybody had any idea who they were, but just beautiful, beautiful films that can be very, very powerful for kids to explore and really feel connected to other parts of the world, so that would be a great one. I also really like Facing History and Ourselves. I think that they do a really nice job of framing history through that lens of personal choices, so they can make history relevant by getting kids to think about the extent to which they themselves would be upstanders in moments of oppression and what it means to make choices that are for the good of others, not just for your own good. So really, really neat curriculum there. In terms of pedagogy, I'm increasingly convinced that student-directed learning is the key. I work in project-based learning with the Buck Institute, and that's what I tend to focus the most on. But I think there are a variety of different student-driven paradigms, like inquiry-driven kinds of approaches that are also excellent. Paul, you have a question? Paul, I see your hands up. Did you have a question? You're welcome to take the mic if you do. Okay. Paul decides he has a question. I'm glad to respond to it. So yeah, those are a few. I mean, I do think it's not just about finding good curriculum, it's also about putting kids in the driver's seat. And the metaphor that I use in my own courses and the work that I do with teachers is, you know, if we imagine global education as the school bus, or as a tour bus, moving through a given community, how do we make sure that the kids get off the tour bus and get involved and get their hands a little bit dirty and really connect with people? And that includes allowing students to drive the bus, even if that's a terrifying thought in both literal and metaphorical ways. But we really try to create the space for that. Helen, you have a question? I'm seeing a lot of hands, but I'm not sure if folks have questions or not. I'm not hearing from people. Glad to glad to respond to questions if there are others.
We should great question. Let's finish this one last question and then wrap things up so people can get to the next series of presentations.
Okay. Yes.
Go for
Absolutely, it. I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, I have had some challenges with that, Kate, and I appreciate that question. I have definitely noticed, you know, I mean, I think part of it is that I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm always really careful to say to students, you know, please disagree, you know, jump in, share your ideas. I think part of the trick is making sure that it comes from just the kids more than from the teacher. So when you create a space for critical dialogue, if you will, that it's not the teacher standing at the front making political statements, but that the kids are getting opportunities to investigate and to start to form their own opinions. So as an example, when I started working in Bismarck, my mother asked the question, so are you going to share, are you going to get them doing some anti-fracking projects? And I said, oh no, not at all. That's not my role and it's not their role. But as soon as a teacher starts teaching, doing student-directed learning and projects around energy and the safest and healthiest forms of energy, it's going to come out of the students potentially that there might be issues with some of the local practices rather than coming out of the mouth of the teacher. So I think that's a very, very important point. You don't want to lose your job over the point. But I also found that I could be surprisingly political as long as I was very careful to say, this is where I come from. This is my perspective. We're here to share a variety of perspectives. I want to hear yours and know what they are, and it's not just about one given perspective being right. I'm not here to, brainstorm or convince others. And thank you, actually, Lucy, for mentioning Sylvia. Her work is excellent, and you can find her online as Languages. She does some really great work around how to make sure that deep connections happen through technologies and has really done some nice things. All right. Well, Lucy, I believe you'd like to wrap up and allow people to move on. So thank you all again for being part of the conversation and for warming my rather cold evening in Bismarck, North Dakota. It's been a pleasure connecting with all of you. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm glad to point you in the direction of other resources and things like that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's been great having you here, and we appreciate everything that you've contributed to our community.
Thank you.